And we're not done with conflicts yet. In West Asia, attacks seldom go unanswered. If there's a strike, there will be a counter-strike. Earlier today, we saw an example of this. The United Arab Emirates and its partners struck Yemen's capital. Their target was the Houthi rebels. Reports say at least 20 people were killed. This attack was not a surprise. The Houthis began this cycle of violence. On Monday, they dropped bombs in Abu Dhabi. 3 people were killed, including 2 Indians. A few hours later, the UAE promised to take revenge, and today they lived up to that promise. The Saudi-led coalition launched airstrikes in Yemen's capital, Sana'a. They struck the home of a high-ranking Houthi official. Before the strikes, the coalition also intercepted Houthi drones, around 8 of them, heading to Saudi Arabia. Clearly, tensions are rising in West Asia, but the question is, why is this happening now? Because the war in Yemen is heating up. Like we told you yesterday, Yemen is in the middle of a civil war. On one side, we have the Houthi rebels backed by Iran. On the other side, there is a coalition led by Saudi Arabia. And the UAE is a part of that coalition. They do not deploy their own soldiers in Yemen, but they train and fund Yemeni troops. Last week, those troops entered the battlefield. They cut through Houthi positions in the oil-rich city of Marib. And how did the Houthis respond? By attacking Abu Dhabi. Monday's attack was a warning to the UAE, stay away from the civil war it could follow.
The operation successfully achieved its objectives. The Yemeni armed forces, while implementing what they promised, renew their warning to the countries of aggression that they will receive more painful hits.
More painful hits, he says. This is the Houthi warning. And chances are the UAE will respond in kind. This escalation has dashed any hope of a ceasefire in Yemen. In fact, it has opened a new front. You see, the UAE was gradually taking a backseat in this war. In 2019, they began pulling out their soldiers. But Monday's attack would change that equation. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has spoken to his Emirati counterpart. Both men agreed on a joint response. And that's what we saw today, a coalition airstrike on the Yemeni capital. This escalation could change the tide of war in Yemen. And it should concern India too. Around 3.5 million Indians live and work in the UAE. Their lives could be at risk. Monday's attack killed 2 Indians working at an oil facility in Abu Dhabi. The Indian embassy says the victims have been identified. The UAE's foreign minister also reached out to India. He spoke with India's external affairs minister S. Jaishankar. New Delhi says it stands in solidarity with the UAE. Most of their even their newest partner Israel, they've all supported Abu Dhabi. And this kind of support is an insurance for the UAE, a license to retaliate without fear. The problem is, the Houthis are thinking exactly the same. Monday's attack was unprecedented. The Houthis have repeatedly hit Saudi Arabia, but this time they went beyond. They struck the UAE, which is a stable real estate in West Asia. So here is the question. If Saudi Arabia and the UAE are fair game, then who is next? Does this mean the Houthis will target more Gulf states? Plus, what is Iran doing about this? They have been training and funding the Houthi rebels. This is no secret. They've supplied rockets, drones and missiles. This attack would not have been possible without Iran's support. So what is Tehran's game plan here? On Monday, their diplomats arrived in Saudi Arabia. Their mission was to reopen Iran's representative office to the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So pretty soon, Iran will have a diplomatic presence in Jeddah. And this is happening after 6 years. Iran has been reaching out to the UAE as well. Last month, Emirati security officials visited Tehran. Their visit came ahead of the nuclear. At the same time, their proxies are raining bombs. Is this Iran's way of exerting pressure? Or are the Houthis acting on their own? Either way, it is bad news for West Asia. All of these attacks have spooked the global oil market. The UAE, remember, is the 7th largest oil producer in the world. They pump out 4 million barrels every day. So oil benchmarks are shooting up. On Tuesday, they hit a 7-year high. The way this is unfolding, we can be sure of 2 things. Number one, the emboldened Houthis will plot more attacks, not just against Saudi Arabia, but other Gulf states as well. And number 2, the war in Yemen is set to escalate. Once the pandemic ends, we could see more attacks, more strikes, and more reprisals.